Did you give him any advice? Of course not. He wouldn't take it from me, I don't think, at that age. No, but I was interested to hear how he got on. Prince Louis had always been full of laughter. The cheeky little prince who could light up any room. Music, suddenly, the sparkle in his eyes began to fade. Why had he stopped smiling? Why was he refusing meals and hiding his usual mischief? William first noticed the change after Catherine's illness. But even after her recovery, Louis remained unusually quiet. However, when Louis passed out one morning, it ignited a strange fear in them. Could it be another diagnosis awaiting them? Was he hiding a deeper fear? Or was something more heartbreaking unfolding behind those young eyes? The joyful prince. The morning sunshine poured through the tall windows of Adelaide Cottage as Prince Louis raced down the hallway, his laughter echoing off ancient walls. At just 6 years old, the youngest child of Prince William and Princess Catherine had already earned himself a special reputation within the royal family. He was the one who could make even the most serious moments dissolve into giggles. The child whose sparkling eyes and mischievous grin could soften any stern face. During breakfast one particular morning, Louis had climbed onto his chair and announced with absolute confidence that he would become a dinosaur expert when he grew up. His older brother, George, had rolled his eyes while Princess Charlotte tried to hide her smile behind her juice glass. Their mother had simply reached over and ruffled his hair, whispering something that made him beam with pride. Music, these were the ordinary moments that filled their home with warmth, the simple exchanges that created the fabric of their family life. The palace staff adored him completely. Kitchen workers often found themselves sneaking extra biscuits into his lunchbox, knowing that his genuine "thank you so much" would make their entire day brighter. Gardeners working on the grounds would look up to find Louis watching them with fascination, asking endless questions about every flower and insect he spotted. One elderly gardener later remembered how the young prince had carefully picked a dandelion and presented it as though it were the rarest treasure. "This is for you because you work so hard," Louis had said with complete sincerity. Public appearances revealed his natural charm to the world beyond palace walls. During one notable carriage procession, Louis had waved so enthusiastically that his hand became a blur of motion, delighting everyone who witnessed his unbridled excitement. At another event, he had stuck his tongue out playfully, earning gentle correction from his mother, but also capturing hearts with his unfiltered spontaneity. Unlike children raised to constant formality, Louis possessed an authentic spirit that refused to be completely contained by royal protocol. His relationship with his siblings showed a different side of his personality. Charlotte, Snots, had discovered that her little brother made an excellent partner for imaginative games, willing to play any role she assigned him without complaint. Whether he was a knight defending a castle or a patient in her pretend hospital, Louis threw himself into each character with complete dedication. George, though sometimes exasperated by his younger brother's energy, secretly enjoyed teaching Louis about football and watching his determination to master every skill. "You have to kick harder," George would instruct, and Louis, music, would nod seriously before attempting another goal with fierce concentration. Catherine often spoke privately about how Louis brought unexpected joy into difficult moments. When schedules became overwhelming or responsibilities felt heavy, his sudden appearance in her office would shift everything. He would climb onto her lap without invitation, settling there as though he belonged nowhere else in the world. "Mommy, can we go feed the ducks?" he might ask, completely unaware of meetings waiting or duties demanding attention. Those interruptions became precious reminders of what truly mattered. William had his own special bond with his youngest son. Evening routines included rough and tumble play that left both of them breathless with laughter. Louis would launch himself at his father with complete trust, knowing those strong arms would always catch him. During quieter moments, they would sit together looking at books about animals or adventures, with Louis asking questions that revealed his curious mind. Why do elephants have such long noses? Or can dragons be friendly? These conversations reminded William of innocence worth protecting. The household staff often exchanged knowing glances when Louis appeared, anticipating whatever delightful chaos might follow. He had once convinced a visiting dignitary to participate in an impromptu music race across the garden. Another time he had organized all his stuffed animals into what he called a very important meeting and invited his grandfather to attend as a special guest. These moments of pure childhood magic made him beloved by everyone who knew him. Nobody could have imagined that such brightness would soon face shadows beyond anything a child should endure. The first signs, music, of change. Something shifted in the Adelaide cottage household during late winter. Though nobody could pinpoint exactly when it began, Louis stopped racing through the hallways with his usual abandon. The echoes of laughter that once bounced off the walls grew quieter, then disappeared altogether. Catherine noticed at first during breakfast one grey morning when Louis barely touched his favorite pancakes, pushing them around his plate, music, with distant eyes. William sat across the table watching his youngest son with growing concern. The boy who normally chatted endlessly about his dreams and plans now sat in silence staring at music, nothing in particular. "Lise, darling, are you feeling all right?" Catherine asked gently, reaching across to touch his forehead. He nodded without meeting her eyes and mumbled something about not being hungry. She exchanged a worried glance with William, but neither voiced the fear creeping into their thoughts. The changes came gradually, like seasons shifting without announcement. Charlotte tried pulling her little brother into their favorite games, setting up elaborate scenarios with all his beloved toys arranged just the way he liked. "Come on, Louis, you have to be the dragon this time, music," she insisted, tugging at his sleeve. He looked at the toys with an expression that seemed almost confused, "Music," as though he had forgotten how to play. "Maybe later," he whispered, turning away to curl up on the window seat instead. George attempted his own approach, bringing out the football and demonstrating new tricks he had learned. "Watch this, Louis. I can teach you," he called enthusiastically, "music," hoping to spark some of that fierce determination his brother always showed. But Louis simply shook his head and walked back inside, leaving George standing alone in the garden with the ball at his feet. The older boy stood there for several long minutes, unable to understand what had changed. William attributed these transformations to the enormous weight pressing down on their family. Catherine's cancer diagnosis had shattered their world into pieces, and he assumed his sensitive, music, youngest child was simply struggling to process such frightening news. "Music, he is just worried about his mother," William explained to concerned staff members who mentioned Levy's unusual quietness. "He needs time to adjust to everything happening around us." It seemed like a reasonable explanation, one that made sense given music, the circumstances they faced. Meal times became particularly troubling. The boy who once asked for second helpings now barely finished half of music, what sat before him. Cook prepared his favorite dishes, hoping to tempt his appetite back, but plates returned to the kitchen nearly untouched. The young prince hardly ate anything again, she reported with increasing worry, noting how his clothes seemed to hang looser on his small frame. Palace staff began whispering among themselves about the changes they witnessed. The gardener who once received dandelion gifts now worked his flower beds alone without curious questions or fascinated observations. Housekeepers found Louis sitting motionless in corners, staring at walls with an expression they could not read. One maid later recalled finding him standing perfectly still in the library, tears running silently down his cheeks. "Are you hurt, Your Highness?" she had asked with alarm. He had simply wiped his face and walked away without answering. Catherine held Louis close during bedtime routines, stroking his hair and singing soft lullabies as she had done since infancy. She felt his small body rigid against hers, lacking the relaxed warmth of a contented child. "Tell Mommy what is bothering you," she whispered into the darkness. "Everything is fine," came his automatic reply, spoken in a voice that carried no conviction whatsoever. William stood outside the bedroom door one evening, listening to those whispered exchanges, music, and felt cold fear settle in his chest. This was more than sadness or stress. Music, something had stolen the light from his son's eyes, and he could not identify what monster lurked behind this terrible change. Lingering concern posteriori. Spring arrived with promising warmth, painting the gardens in brilliant colors that should have lifted every heart. Catherine stood at the window watching new flowers bloom, grateful beyond words for her recovery. The cancer battle had ended victoriously, and doctors assured her the worst had passed. Yet, even as relief flooded through the household, one shadow refused to lift. Louis remained trapped in his quiet world, unreachable. Despite all their efforts to bring him back, Charlotte organized a special tea party in the garden, arranging everything exactly how Louis used to enjoy it. She set out his favorite stuffed animals in careful positions, poured pretend tea into tiny cups, and baked biscuit crumbs she called magical cookies. "Louis, please come," she begged, standing at his bedroom door with hopeful eyes. "Everyone is waiting for you, and the dragon said he misses you terribly," but Louis simply turned over in his bed, facing the wall. Charlotte stood there feeling helpless, unable to understand why her brother would not return to her. George tried different tactics, appealing to the competitive spirit that once burned so brightly in his younger brother. He challenged Louis to races across the lawn, offered to let him win at cards, even suggested they build the biggest fort ever constructed in their playroom. "We could make it reach the ceiling," George proposed with genuine excitement, hoping to spark some interest. Louis looked at him with tired eyes and shook his head. "I do not want to," he said quietly, and George felt something crack inside his chest. William spent countless hours trying to coax explanations from his youngest son. He sat on the floor of Louis's room, attempting casual conversations about anything that might open a door between them. "Remember when we saw those elephants at the zoo?" he asked, recalling a day when Louis had talked about nothing else for weeks afterward. "You said you wanted to learn everything about them." Louis picked at the carpet threads, offering only silence in response. William watched him carefully, searching for clues in every gesture and expression. Music. Catherine approached the situation with gentle persistence, inviting Louise to help her with small tasks around the house. "Would you like to choose flowers for the dining table?" she asked one morning, remembering how he once loved arranging blooms in vases. Louis followed her to the garden, but stood, music, motionless among the roses, making no move to pick anything. She knelt beside him, cupping his small face in her hands. "Darling, Mommy is better now," she whispered. "You do not need to worry anymore." His eyes filled with tears. He refused to let fall, and he pulled away from her touch. Nighttime became particularly difficult for everyone. Levy's sleep grew restless, music, plagued by dreams that left him crying out in the darkness. William or Catherine would rush to his bedside, finding him tangled in sweaty sheets, trembling and disoriented. "What frightened you, sweetheart?" Catherine asked during one such episode, holding him against her heart. I cannot remember, Louis replied, though his terrified expression suggested otherwise. These episodes happened with increasing frequency, stealing rest from the entire household. The couple lay awake in their own bed night after night, discussing their growing fears in hushed voices. This is not normal sadness, Catherine admitted, voicing what both had been thinking. Something more is happening inside him. Something we, music, cannot see. William agreed, feeling utterly powerless against an enemy he could not identify or fight. They had faced cancer together, endured that terrible battle, but this invisible struggle consuming their son felt somehow worse because they had no weapons against it. Staff members continued reporting worrying observations. Louis no longer responded to jokes or kind words. His appetite remained poor despite Cook's creative attempts to tempt him with special treats. The household that had once revolved partly around his infectious energy now moved around his quiet presence like water flowing past a stone. Everyone felt the wrongness of it. The unnatural silence where joyful noise should exist. George found Charlotte crying in the hallway one afternoon. He does not want to play with me anymore, she sobbed. Does Louis not love us now? George wrapped his arms around his sister, having no answers to offer. They both felt abandoned by the music brother who had once been their constant companion and closest friend. However, what awaited them would soon leave the palace in a state of panic. The crisis, a morning of panic. The dawn broke cold and grey on a Tuesday morning that would change everything. Catherine walked into Louis' bedroom to wake him for breakfast and immediately knew something was terribly wrong. His small body lay curled beneath the blankets, shivering despite the warmth of the room. She touched his forehead and jerked her hand back from the burning heat radiating from his skin. William, she called out, trying to keep her voice steady. William, come quickly. Within seconds, William stood beside the bed, his face draining of color as he looked down at their son. Louis' eyes were half open but unfocused, his breathing shallow and rapid. Sweat dampened his hair, making it stick to his flushed cheeks. Louis, can you hear me? William asked, urgently, gently shaking the boy's shoulder. Louis made a small sound but did not truly respond. His gaze sliding past his father without recognition. Catherine felt ice flood through her veins as she reached for her phone with trembling fingers. The next minutes blurred into frantic motion. Protection officers appeared instantly, their trained calm barely masking their own concern. Music. Catherine wrapped Louis in a blanket while William scooped him into his arms, feeling how light his son had become, how fragile. We need to go now, William said unnecessarily, already moving toward the door. Staff members scattered before them, clearing pathways, making urgent calls, activating emergency protocols that had been planned but never expected to be used. The drive to the hospital stretched endlessly despite lasting only minutes. Catherine sat in the back seat, cradling Louis against her chest, whispering prayers and reassurances she was not sure he could hear. Stay with music, us, darling, she murmured against his burning forehead. Stay with mommy. William gripped the seat in front of him so tightly his knuckles turned white, willing the vehicle to move faster through streets that seemed deliberately obstructive. Music. Every red light felt like a personal assault. Every turn. An unnecessary delay. Hospital staff stood ready at the entrance, having received advanced warning of their arrival. A team of doctors and nurses surrounded them immediately, whisking Louis away on a gurney while firing questions at his parents. How long has he had the fever? Has he complained of pain? Any recent illnesses? Catherine tried to answer coherently, but her mind kept replaying the image of her son's glassy, unseeing eyes. William held her hand so hard it hurt, anchoring them both to reality as they followed their child down sterile corridors. The emergency room exploded into controlled chaos around Louis Suisse's small form. Doctors attached monitors that beeped with alarming urgency, while nurses drew blood from veins that seemed too tiny for such invasion. "The temperature is 40 degrees, someone announced, and Catherine felt her knees weaken. William caught her supporting her weight as they watched their son disappear beneath a swarm of medical professionals. "We are doing everything we can," a doctor assured them, but the words offered no comfort against the terror consuming them both. King Charles arrived within the hour, his own face etched with worry despite his attempts at appearing strong. He found William and Catherine huddled together in a private waiting room, both looking shattered beyond repair. "Music, any news?" he asked quietly. Sitting beside them, William shook his head, unable to form words. Charles reached out and gripped his son's shoulder, offering silent support that felt inadequate against the magnitude of their fear. They sat together in heavy silence, listening to the distant sounds of hospital machinery and urgent footsteps. "Music," hours crawled past with agonizing slowness. Doctors came and went, explaining, "Music, tests being conducted, possibilities being explored, but offering no definitive answers." Blood work showed markers of infection, but the source remained mysterious. Scans revealed nothing obvious, no clear explanation for the sudden collapse. "We need more time," the lead physician explained gently, seeing the desperation in their faces. "We are testing for everything we can think of, but these things require patience." Catherine wanted to scream that she had no patience left, that every second without answers felt like torture. Instead, she nodded numbly and asked when she could see her son. Soon came the reply, "Music," a word that meant nothing and everything simultaneously. William paced the small room like a caged animal, his mind racing through worst-case scenarios he could not silence. Music, what if they lost him? What if this mysterious illness proved untreatable? What if their bright, joyful boy never returned to them? Charlotte and George waited at home under the care of trusted staff, repeatedly asking questions nobody could answer. "When is Louis coming back?" Charlotte asked for the 100th time, her small voice breaking. "Is he going to be okay?" George demanded, trying to sound brave, but failing completely. The staff members exchanged helpless looks, wishing they had reassurances to offer these frightened children. Back at the hospital, William finally gained permission to see Louis. He walked into the room and felt his heart shatter at the sight of his youngest son lying motionless beneath white sheets surrounded by machines and tubes. Louis' eyes were closed, his face still flushed with fever despite medications pumping through his system. William sat beside the bed and took one small hand in his, pressing it gently. "I am here, Louis," he whispered brokenly. "Papa is here and I am not leaving you." Catherine joined him moments later, taking Levy's other hand. They sat together on opposite sides of their son's bed, connected through him, watching the monitors track every heartbeat and breath. Outside the window, the world continued as though nothing catastrophic was happening. But inside that room, time stood still while they waited for answers that seemed determined never to come. However, no one expected Catherine, who is known for her graceful composure, to break down. Emotional breakdown. The breakdown happened in the hospital corridor outside Levy's room, away from the medical staff and monitoring equipment. Catherine had been holding herself together through sheer willpower for nearly 12 hours, music, maintaining the composed exterior expected of someone in her position. But when a nurse emerged to say they still had no diagnosis, something inside her finally shattered. Her legs gave way beneath her, and she slid down the wall until she sat crumpled on the cold floor, sobs tearing from her throat with a violence that shocked everyone present. William dropped to his knees beside her, pulling her into his arms as her whole body shook with the force of her crying. "I cannot do this again," she gasped between sobs, her carefully maintained strength dissolving completely. "I cannot watch another person I love fight for their life. I cannot, William. I just cannot." Her hands clutched at his shirt desperately as though anchoring herself to something solid in a world that had become unbearably fragile. He held her tighter, his own tears falling silently into her hair, unable to offer the reassurances she needed because he shared every terror consuming her. Protection officers discreetly created a barrier of privacy around the collapsed couple, their own faces reflecting the anguish of witnessing such raw pain. These were people trained to face physical threats, to position their bodies between danger and those they protected. But this enemy could not be fought with vigilance or courage. This invisible threat attacking a 6-year-old boy rendered all their training utterly useless, leaving them as helpless as the parents crying on the floor before them. King Charles arrived to find his son and daughter-in-law in this devastated state. His own composure, usually unshakable after decades of royal training, wavered, music, visibly. He knelt beside them with difficulty, his knees protesting against the hard floor, and placed a gentle hand on Catherine's shoulder. "You are not alone in this," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion he rarely allowed others to witness. "We will carry, music, this burden together as a family." Catherine looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes that held depths of suffering no parent should ever know. "He is just a little boy," she whispered brokenly. "He should be playing with his toys and laughing with his siblings. Instead, he is lying in that bed, and nobody can tell us why." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks as she spoke, each word costing her visible effort. Charles felt his own eyes burn with threatening moisture, something he had not experienced in public for more years than he could count. William pulled away from Catherine slightly, dragging both hands through his hair in a gesture of complete helplessness. "I am supposed to protect my children," he said, his voice cracking with anguish. "That is my job as their father, to keep them safe from harm. But how do I fight something the doctors cannot even name? How do I protect him from this?" He looked at his father with desperation, music that stripped away every layer of royal dignity, revealing only a terrified parent facing his worst nightmare. Charles had no answers to offer, no wisdom that could ease this particular torment. He had lived through many difficulties during his long life and had weathered storms that threatened his family and his future. But watching his own son suffer through a child's mysterious illness brought, music, him face to face with a powerlessness he had rarely experienced. "We wait," he finally said, knowing how inadequate the words sounded. "We stay strong for Louis, music, and we trust that the medical team will find answers." The hallway became a small bubble of shared grief, separated from the bustling hospital beyond. Nurses walked past with averted eyes, giving the family privacy in their darkest moment. A young doctor paused nearby, her own expression troubled as she witnessed the raw emotion pouring from these people whom the world saw as untouchable. She realized in that instant that titles and positions meant nothing when a child's life hung uncertain. Pain recognized no boundaries of class or status. "Music," Catherine eventually pulled herself together with visible effort, wiping her face with shaking hands. "I need to see him," she said quietly, her voice from crying. "I need to be with Louis." William helped her stand, both of them unsteady on their feet, leaning on each other for support. Charles rose as well, his joints protesting, but his resolve firm. They walked back into Louis' room together, a small family united by love and terror in equal measure. Inside the room, Louis lay exactly as they had left him, his small chest rising and falling with reassuring regularity despite the mystery ravaging his body. Catherine returned to her chair beside his bed, taking his hand once more. She brought it to her lips, kissing his fevered knuckles gently. "Fight, my darling," she whispered, music against his skin. "Please keep fighting." While the doctors tried to find out the truth behind Louis' illness, Louis finally opened up, revealing a shocking secret no one expected. The truth emerges. Louis speaks. The fever broke on the third day, leaving Louis exhausted, but finally conscious, music, and aware of his surroundings. Medical staff cautiously celebrated this improvement while continuing their search for answers. But the crisis had passed enough to allow quiet moments between parents and child. Catherine sat on the edge of the hospital bed while William pulled his chair close, both watching their son with hearts still racing from days of terror. Louis looked so small against the white pillows, his face pale and drawn, but his eyes were clear for the first time in what felt like forever. William reached out and gently brushed hair from Louis' forehead, his hand, music, trembling slightly. "You gave us quite a scare, little man," he said softly, trying to smile despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. Louis looked at his father with an expression so sorrowful it seemed impossible for such a young face to carry. "Music, I am sorry, Papa," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I did not mean to make everyone worry about me." Catherine felt fresh tears prick her eyes at the genuine guilt in her son's voice. "Darling, you have, music, nothing to apologize for," she assured him, taking his small hand in both of hers. "Being unwell is never your fault. We just want to understand what has been troubling you." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "You have been so sad for such a long time, even before you got sick. Can you tell us why?" Levy's lower lip began to tremble, and he looked away from both his parents toward the window, where afternoon light filtered through sterile blinds. For several long moments, he said nothing, music, and William and Catherine waited with held breath, afraid that pushing too hard might close the door that seemed to be opening. Finally, Louis spoke in a voice so quiet they had to lean closer to hear. "I thought you were going to replace me." The words hung in the air like a physical, music, presence, shocking in their simplicity and devastating in their implications. William and Catherine exchanged confused glances before Catherine asked gently, "Replace you, sweetheart? What do you mean?" Louis turned back to face them, his eyes filling with tears that spilled down his cheeks. "Music, when you were sick, Mommy, I heard people talking. They said you needed lots of care and attention. I thought that meant you did not have time for me anymore." William felt his heart break into smaller pieces than he thought possible. "Louis, no," he began, but his son continued, the words tumbling out now as though a dam had finally burst. "And then I heard people talking about you having a new baby. And I knew for sure once the baby arrives, nobody will want to play with me or read me stories anymore. Everyone will forget about me because I will not be special." Catherine pressed her hand to her mouth, stifling a sob at the childlike reasoning that had tortured her youngest son for months. "Is that why you stopped eating and stopped playing with George and Charlotte?" Louis nodded miserably, more tears streaming down his face. "I thought if I stayed very quiet and did not bother anyone, maybe you would still keep me. I tried so hard to be good and not cause any trouble." William stood abruptly, unable to remain seated while hearing such heartbreaking confessions. He walked to the window and pressed his forehead against the cool glass, his shoulders shaking with silent crying. The idea that his precious son had been suffering under such a terrible misunderstanding, believing himself unwanted and replaceable, music, cut deeper than any blade could reach. Catherine continued holding Louis' hand, her own tears falling freely now as she struggled to find words adequate to undo months of silent suffering. "Louis, music, look at me," she said firmly, waiting until his frightened eyes met hers. "You are not replaceable. You are not forgettable. You are a Louis and nobody in this entire world could ever take your place in our hearts." She cupped his face gently, making sure he could see the absolute truth, music, in her expression. "When I was sick, I needed care, yes, but that never meant I loved you any less. Every single day, even on my worst days, I thought about you and your brother and sister." Louis' face crumpled completely. "But what about the new baby?" he asked desperately. "Babies need so much attention, and they cry all the time, and everyone thinks they are so special. You will not have time for me anymore." His voice rose with panic. All the fear he had been suppressing for months pouring out in this flood of confession. "I will just be in the way and you will wish I was not around so much." William returned to the bedside, kneeling so he was at eye level with his son. He took Louis' other hand, completing a circle of connection between the three of them. "Listen to me very carefully," he said, music, his voice rough with emotion, but steady with conviction. "A new baby does not replace the children we already have. Our love does not run out like water from a tap. It grows bigger to include everyone. And besides, no baby is coming. It's just gossip. You should focus on only what mommy and daddy tells you." He paused, searching for words a 6-year-old could truly understand. "When George was born, we loved him with our whole hearts. Then Charlotte came, and we did not love George any less. We loved them both completely. When you arrived, our hearts grew even bigger to hold all that love for 3 children." Catherine nodded, squeezing Louis' hand gently. "You are our youngest prince, our Louis, who makes us laugh and asks the most wonderful questions about everything. You are the one who picks dandelions for the gardeners and organizes meetings for your stuffed animals. Nobody else can be those things because nobody else is you." She leaned forward, kissing his forehead softly. Louis looked between his parents, desperate to believe, but still uncertain. "Promise?" he whispered. "Music, promise I will still be important." William pulled his son into a fierce embrace, careful of the medical equipment still attached, but unable to maintain any distance. "I promise with every part of my being," he said against Louis' hair. "You will always be important. You will always be loved. You will always belong with music, us." Despite trying to be strong for their son, the emotional impact on William and Catherine was far beyond anyone could imagine. Emotional impact on the parents. The night after Levy's confession, William and Catherine sat together in the family room of their temporary accommodation near the hospital. Neither able to sleep despite exhaustion weighing heavily on them both. Catherine stared at her hands, turning them over as though searching for answers written on her own skin. "How did we miss this?" she asked quietly, her voice hollow with self-recrimination. "How did we not see that our own child was suffering so deeply right in front of us?" William had been asking himself the same question for hours, running through every interaction with Louis over the past months, searching for clues they should have noticed. "We were so focused on your illness, on getting you through treatment," he said, the words tasting bitter. "I thought his sadness was about watching you fight cancer. I never imagined he was creating an entire narrative in his head about being replaced." He dropped his head into his hands, overwhelmed by guilt that sat like stones in his stomach. Music. Catherine stood and walked to the window overlooking the darkened hospital grounds. He is 6 years old, she whispered, her reflection ghostly in the glass. 6 years old, and he convinced himself that a new baby meant we would discard him like something broken or unwanted. What kind of parents are we that our child could believe such a thing? Fresh tears tracked down her face, adding to the countless others she had shed over these terrible days. The weight of their failure pressed down on them both with crushing force. William thought about all the times Louis had withdrawn, all the refused meals and avoided games, music, and he had simply attributed it to temporary stress. We should have pushed harder for answers, he said, standing to join Catherine at the window. We should have insisted on understanding what was happening inside his mind instead of making assumptions. Music. His voice cracked with regret that would haunt him for years to come. Catherine turned to face her husband, seeing her own anguish mirrored in his expression. We need to change everything about how we approach this, she said with sudden intensity. Not just with Louis, but with all three of them. We cannot assume we understand their fears or worries. We need to ask to listen to space where they feel safe telling us anything. The determination in her voice came from a place of music, desperate need to prevent such suffering from ever happening again. They discussed late into the night how to rebuild Levy's sense of security without overwhelming him with attention that might feel false or temporary. He needs consistency, William observed, music, thinking through their complicated schedules filled with duties and obligations, not grand gestures or dramatic promises, but daily proof that he matters to us. Catherine nodded agreement, already mentally reorganizing priorities that suddenly seemed far less important than they had before. The following morning, they met with child psychologists recommended by the hospital staff. The experts listened carefully to the full story, nodding with understanding that offered some comfort. Children Levy's age often struggle with abstract concepts like unconditional love, one psychologist explained gently. They interpret events through very literal frameworks and they rarely ask for clarification when they are frightened. She paused before adding, what he needs now is patient rebuilding of trust and security. William and Catherine absorbed every suggestion, every strategy offered for helping their son heal from months of self-imposed isolation. They learned about the importance of validating his feelings rather than dismissing them. They also tried their best to prevent their kids from hearing the public's gossip so it would not spark up any weird assumptions in their head. The information felt simultaneously overwhelming and desperately necessary. Catherine made immediate decisions about her music, remaining public commitments. I'm cancelling everything non-essential for the next 3 months, she announced firmly when her private secretary began discussing the calendar. My priority is being present for my children, particularly Louis. He needs to see through consistent action that what we told him is true. The secretary nodded without argument, recognizing that no duty could supersede this maternal imperative. William had similar conversations with his own staff, music, restructuring his schedule to allow for more family time and flexibility. If Louis needs me, I need to be available, he stated clearly. That means building buffer time around commitments and being prepared to adjust when necessary. He refused to entertain any protests about royal responsibilities. Having gained a painful perspective about what truly mattered, they developed new family rituals designed to reinforce each child's individual importance. Dedicated one-on-one time became non-negotiable, with each parent spending special hours with each child separately. For Louis specifically, they planned activities he had once loved, gently coaxing him back toward joy without forcing or rushing his recovery. We let him set the pace, Catherine reminded William during their planning sessions. We follow his lead while showing him we are always there. The guilt remained settling into their bones like a permanent ache. But alongside it grew fierce determination to transform this painful lesson into lasting change. They would become the parents their children needed. The ones who asked questions and truly listened to answers. Who recognized that small hearts could carry burdens too heavy for their size. But what did King Charles help Prince Louis recover? The role of King Charles. King Charles arrived at the hospital each morning with quiet determination, carrying no dramatic gestures, music, only steady reassurance. On the fourth day of Louis' hospitalization, he found William standing alone in the corridor, staring blankly at a wall chart. Charles approached slowly and placed a hand on his son's shoulder. William turned, his face, music, heavy with exhaustion and worry. "He thought we would replace him," William said hoarsely. "Our little boy spent months believing he was replaceable." Charles tightened his grip. "You could not have known, music," he said gently. Children hide their deepest fears remarkably well. He carried his own guilt, too, remembering moments when Louis had seemed withdrawn during family gatherings. Moments he had dismissed as tiredness or moodiness. "I should have noticed, too," he admitted quietly. The confession created a small bond between father and son. Both weighed down by regret. Later, Charles found Catherine sitting beside Louis' bed, reading aloud from a storybook. Louise had fallen asleep halfway through, but she continued anyway, her voice soft and soothing. Charles stayed in the doorway for a few moments. Charles quietly encouraged Catherine to continue reading, noting that Louis might still hear her even while asleep. Catherine, smiling weakly, set the book aside, reflecting on the times her treatment had left her too tired to read, fearing her son had taken it as rejection. Charles reassured her that she had been fighting for her life and could not carry guilt for surviving. Understanding the delicate balance between royal duty and family crisis, music, he quietly took over several of William and Catherine's scheduled commitments, insisting to advisors that their son needed their full attention and that everything else could wait. Music. When Louis was ready to receive visitors beyond his immediate family, Charles brought simple, thoughtful gifts. Music, a book about elephants, a smooth stone from the palace gardens, and a drawing one of the corgis had allegedly made. These small gestures spoke louder than grand proclamations ever could. Charles spent time alone with Louis while William and Catherine took a brief walk outside. "Your papa told me you were worried about having a younger one," he said carefully. Louis nodded solemnly. "Babies change families," Charles continued. "But not in the ways you might fear. They add to families rather than taking away." He shared stories from William and Harry's births, explaining how he had feared being overwhelmed, but learned his heart could love both completely. "Did you forget about Papa when Harry was born?" Louis asked seriously. "Never for a single moment," Charles said firmly. "William was my firstborn, Harry, my second. Each held a special place, just as you hold a place in your parents' hearts that belongs only to you." He gently tapped Louis' chest. "A new baby will have their own place, but yours remains untouched and secure. You are the last child. If your daddy wants another one, I'll warn him as a king." Over the following days, the change was gradual, like flowers opening after a long winter. Louis began eating with more enthusiasm, his appetite returning as the emotional weight lifted from his small shoulders. He played cards with George, hosted tea parties with Charlotte, and even made a joke that made the nurses laugh. Each tiny moment was a relief to his parents who watched their son slowly reclaim his joy. One evening, Louis looked up at William, eyes, music, bright once more. "Papa, can we read the elephant book Grandpa brought?" William felt tears prick his eyes. He nodded and settled beside his son. As he read aloud, Louis snuggled against him with the relaxed trust of a child who finally believed he was safe and, music, loved. The crisis had passed, leaving scars, but also lessons about listening, understanding, and the fragile hearts children carry.